Imagine coming home early to plan a surprise for your wedding anniversary, only to find a mysterious package on your doorstep that turns your life upside down. For Jake Kennedy, a 38-year-old chemist from Seattle, this moment marks the beginning of a struggle for truth, justice, and dignity. Can he overcome the betrayal without losing himself? Subscribe because the best is yet to come. Jake Kennedy, 38, was a chemist with a sharp mind for solving problems, working as a consultant for a cutting-edge tech firm in Seattle. His life seemed like a postcard from the Pacific Northwest. A cozy, cedar-shingled home in Capitol Hill, a loving wife, Emily, 36, a curator at the Seattle Art Museum, and their two daughters, Sophie, 12, and Lily, 10. Their days were woven with simple joys, weekend hikes through the misty trails of the Cascades, grabbing lattes at a bustling Starbucks on Pike Street, and summer picnics by the shimmering waters of Lake Washington. Jake was the kind of dad who never missed a beat, whether it was cheering at Sophie's soccer games or helping Lily with her science fair projects. Family was his anchor, his reason to push through long workdays. But beneath the surface of their idyllic life, faint cracks had begun to appear. Emily's frequent work trips to Chicago, where she met with wealthy art donors and visited her college friend Caitlin, had become a regular part of their routine. She often took Sophie and Lily along, framing it as a chance for the girls to bond with Aunt Caitlin, who worked in an art studio. Jake didn't mind at first. He trusted Emily implicitly in love that their daughters got to explore a new city. Yet, something nagged at him. The girls were strangely tight-lipped about their Chicago adventures, brushing off his questions with giggles or quick subject changes. "Oh, it was just fun, Dad," Sophie would say, her eyes darting to Lily, who'd nod and change the topic to school or friends. Jake chalked it up to their growing independence, but the unease lingered. Emily, too, seemed different after those trips, distracted, her smiles a touch forced. He'd catch her staring out the window, lost in thought, or checking her phone more than usual. When he asked about her work, she'd wave it off with a breezy, "Just curator stuff? You wouldn't get it." Jake didn't press. He wasn't one to stir the pot, not when their life seemed so good. One rainy Thursday, everything changed. Jake came home early from the office, his mind buzzing with plans for a surprise to celebrate their 15th wedding anniversary. He wanted to make it special, a candlelit dinner, maybe a weekend getaway to the San Juan Islands. As he stepped onto the porch, shaking rain from his jacket, he noticed a large wooden crate tucked against the door. The label read "Fragile," with Emily's name scrawled in bold ink. The return address, Vivian Clark's studio, Chicago. Jake's brow furrowed. Emily hadn't mentioned any deliveries, and the name Vivian Clark didn't ring a bell. Curious, he pulled out his phone and called her at the museum. "Hey, Em, a package came for you." "Big wooden crate from some Chicago art studio," he said, expecting her usual warmth. Instead, there was a long, heavy pause. "Don't touch it, Jake," she finally snapped, her voice tight with an edge he'd never heard before. "It's for work. I'll handle it." She hung up before he could respond, leaving him staring at the phone, his heart thudding. That evening, Emily rushed home earlier than usual, her coat dripping as she burst through the door. Her eyes locked onto the crate before she even acknowledged Jake. "Hey, you're home early," he said, trying to keep his tone light. She barely glanced at him, kneeling to inspect the crate's seals. "It's just some artwork for an exhibit," she muttered, her fingers tracing the edges as if checking for tampering. "They sent it to the wrong address." Her voice was clipped, her usual poise replaced by a nervous energy that set Jake's nerves on edge. He nodded, but his mind was racing. Why was she so rattled? Over dinner, Sophie and Lily filled the silence with stories about school. Sophie's debate team victory, Lily's new art project, but Emily was distant, her fork pushing food around her plate. Jake watched her, noting the way her fingers tapped restlessly against her wine glass, the way she avoided his gaze. After the girls went to bed, he tried to bring it up again. "So, what's in the crate? Something cool for the museum?" he asked, leaning against the kitchen counter. Emily's shoulders stiffened. "Just some pieces for a potential show," she said, her words too quick. "I'll take it to work tomorrow." She flashed a smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. Jake let it go, not wanting to push, But as they cleaned the dishes side by side, a knot formed in his stomach. That night, as he lay awake next to Emily's steady breathing, the crate loomed in his mind. It wasn't just a delivery. It was a question mark, one that demanded answers. Jake wasn't one to jump to conclusions. His years analyzing data had taught him to seek evidence, to build a case. But Emily's panicked tone, her evasive answers, and the girl's odd silence about Chicago gnawed at him. Something was wrong, and he couldn't ignore it anymore. The seed of doubt had taken root, and it was only a matter of time before it grew. The unease from the mysterious crate lingered in Jake Kennedy's mind like a stubborn fog. He tried to focus on his work at the tech firm, poring over chemical analyses, but Emily's sharp tone and nervous demeanor replayed in his head. By the next morning, the crate was gone. Emily had arranged for museum staff to pick it up before Jake even woke up. "It's at the museum now," she said over breakfast, her voice casual but her eyes avoiding his. "Just some art pieces for a future exhibit." Jake nodded, forcing a smile, but the knot in his stomach tightened. Her explanation felt too tidy, too rehearsed. Determined to shake off his suspicions, Jake threw himself into family life. He helped Lily with her science homework, laughing as she explained her volcano model, and drove Sophie to her debate club practice, cheering her on from the sidelines. But the doubt persisted, creeping into quiet moments. He noticed small things he'd overlooked before. Emily's late-night phone calls, always taken in another room. The way she'd quickly lock her phone when he entered. The Chicago trips that seemed to multiply over the past year. Had they always been this frequent? He couldn't be sure. A week later, the first real crack appeared. Jake was cleaning the living room, tidying up before their anniversary plans, when he found Emily's old phone tucked behind a couch cushion. It was an outdated model she'd stopped using months ago, replaced by a sleek new one. Curious, he powered it on, surprised it still had a charge. The lock screen was password-free, and as he scrolled through, his heart sank. There was a photo, time-stamped from last year's Chicago trip, a candid shot of Emily and a woman he vaguely recognized as Caitlin, her college friend. They were laughing, their faces close, Emily's hand resting on Caitlin's arm in a way that felt too intimate, too familiar. The background showed Sophie and Lily playing nearby, oblivious. Jake's chest tightened. It wasn't definitive proof, but it was enough to make his stomach churn. He spent the next few days digging discreetly. A quick online search revealed that Vivian Clark's studio belonged to Vivian Clark, a renowned photographer who'd passed away a year ago. Her work was celebrated for its emotional depth, capturing raw human connections. Caitlin, listed as Vivian's niece, now ran the studio in Chicago. Jake's mind raced. Emily had mentioned attending a memorial for a colleague last September, but now he wondered if it was Vivian's. Why hadn't she been up front? And why was the crate such a big deal? Jake tried to confront Emily subtly. Over dinner one night, as the girls chattered about a new movie, he mentioned the crate casually. "So what was in that Chicago delivery? Something big for the museum?" Emily's fork paused midair, her eyes flickering with something. Fear? Guilt? "Just some prints," she said, her voice tight. "Nothing finalized yet." She quickly changed the topic, asking Sophie about her debate team. Jake didn't push, but her evasiveness was like a neon sign. His next move was riskier. While Emily was at a late meeting, Jake sat down with Sophie, who was sprawled on the couch with her laptop. "Hey, Soph," he said, keeping his tone light. "You and Lily always have fun in Chicago, right? What do you guys do with Aunt Caitlin?" Sophie's fingers froze on the keyboard, her eyes darting to the side. Just stuff. Museum's pizza, you know," she mumbled, then quickly added, "I got homework, Dad." She bolted upstairs, leaving Jake with a sinking feeling. Sophie was a terrible liar, and her reaction screamed that she was hiding something. That night, Jake lay awake, the pieces of the puzzle swirling in his mind. The photo on the old phone, Emily's secrecy about the crate, Sophie's evasiveness. It all pointed to something bigger. He wasn't ready to call it betrayal. Not yet. But the trust he'd built with Emily over 15 years was fraying, and he couldn't ignore the signs any longer. He needed answers, not just for himself, but for Sophie and Lily. If Emily was keeping secrets, he had to know how deep they ran. His scientist's mind kicked into gear. He'd gather evidence, stay calm, and follow the truth wherever it led. But as he stared at the ceiling, a quiet fear gnawed at him. What if the truth changed everything? Jake Kennedy's world felt like it was tilting, each new clue about Emily's secrecy pushing him closer to a truth he wasn't sure he could face. The photo on her old phone, Sophie's nervous dodge, and the mysterious crate from Chicago had turned his quiet suspicion into a relentless need to know. He wasn't sleeping well, his mind churning through possibilities while he maintained a calm facade for Sophie and Lily. He didn't want to alarm them, not until he had something concrete. Jake's next step was methodical, like solving a complex chemical equation. He started researching Vivian Clark's studio more deeply, scouring online articles and social media for connections to Emily. He learned that Vivian had been a celebrated artist, known for her deeply personal portraits that captured unspoken bonds. Her memorial last September had drawn art world elites, and Jake found a blog post mentioning a Seattle curator giving a tearful speech, likely Emily. His stomach twisted. Why had she lied about it being a work trip? Digging further, he discovered Caitlin, Vivian's niece, had taken over the studio and was close to Emily, often tagged in her Chicago posts. The pieces were starting to fit, but the picture they formed was one Jake dreaded. The real blow came unexpectedly. While helping Lily organize her school bag, Jake found a small sketchbook tucked among her notebooks. Lily loved drawing, so he flipped through it, smiling at her doodles of animals and landscapes. But one page stopped him cold. A pencil sketch of Emily and Vivian, their faces close, hands touching, with Sophie and Lily in the background, labeled Chicago, last summer. The drawing was innocent, childlike, but the intimacy it captured hit Jake like a punch. Lily had seen something, maybe understood it, and put it on paper. Jake closed the sketchbook, his hands shaking. He couldn't ask Lily about it. She was too young to be dragged into this. But the image burned into his mind, amplifying his fears. Desperate for clarity, Jake took a riskier approach. He logged into Emily's rarely used laptop while she was at a museum gala, guessing her password from their anniversary date. Among her emails, he found a thread with Caitlin, buried in a folder labeled Work. The messages were vague but telling. "Can't wait to see you in Chicago next month," Caitlin wrote, followed by, "The pieces from V's estate are ready for you." Emily's reply was brief. "I'll be there. Keep it quiet." Jake's heart raced. Pieces from Vivian's estate. Could that be what was in the crate? And why the secrecy? The betrayal deepened when Jake checked Emily's travel history, accessing their shared credit card statements. Her Chicago trips weren't just frequent. They were meticulously planned, often coinciding with Vivian's exhibitions or Caitlin's events. Some included hotel stays when she claimed to be crashing with Caitlin. The lies were piling up, and Jake felt like a fool for missing them. He wanted to confront Emily, to demand answers, but his scientist instinct held him back. He needed undeniable proof, something that couldn't be brushed off with a smile or an excuse. His breaking point came during a quiet moment with Sophie. They were washing dishes after dinner, Emily still at her gala, when Jake tried again. "Soph, you'd tell me if something was wrong, right?" he asked, keeping his voice steady. Sophie froze, her sponge dripping into the sink. "Everything's fine, Dad," she said, but her voice cracked, and she wouldn't meet his eyes. "You sure? I feel like you and Mom are keeping something from me about Chicago." Sophie's face paled, and she mumbled, "It's nothing. Just Mom's work stuff." She fled to her room, leaving Jake with a sinking certainty. Sophie knew more than she was letting on, and it was tearing her apart. The divide between Jake and his family was growing. He still played the part of the devoted dad, driving Lily to art class and cheering at Sophie's debates, but inside, he was unraveling. Every smile from Emily felt like a mask, every laugh a potential lie. He didn't want to believe she'd betrayed him, not after 15 years of building a life together. But the evidence was mounting. Vivian's memorial, the sketch, the emails, Sophie's guilt. Jake knew he had to act, not out of anger, but to protect his daughters and reclaim the truth. The question was how far Emily's secrets went, and whether he could face what he'd find. Jake Kennedy stood at a crossroads, the weight of Emily's secrets pressing down like the Seattle rain that never seemed to stop. The photo on her old phone, Lily's sketch, Sophie's guilty silence, and the cryptic emails with Caitlin had shredded the trust he'd once held unshakable. His life, once a warm tapestry of family hikes and lakeside picnics, now felt like a puzzle with missing pieces. But Jake wasn't one to lash out or crumble. His chemist's mind demanded logic, evidence, and a plan. He wouldn't let anger consume him, not when Sophie and Lily needed him to be steady. Instead, he chose a path of quiet resolve, determined to uncover the truth and seek justice through lawful means. The first step was to protect his family's future. Jake contacted Sarah Wilson, a sharp divorce attorney recommended by a colleague. In her sleek downtown office, surrounded by views of Puget Sound, Jake laid out his suspicions. Emily's frequent Chicago trips, the mysterious crate, the photo, and the emails suggesting a deeper connection with Vivian Clark. Sarah listened, her pen tapping thoughtfully. "You've got strong grounds for concern," she said, "but we need concrete proof of infidelity to strengthen a divorce case. Washington's a no-fault state, but evidence could sway asset division." She advised Jake to gather more information discreetly and document everything. "Stay calm," she warned. "Emotional outbursts could hurt your case." Jake nodded, his jaw tight. He wasn't after revenge. He wanted fairness for himself and his girls. Next, Jake turned to the crate's origin, Vivian Clark's studio. He couldn't access it directly, but an online search revealed an upcoming Chicago exhibition of Vivian's work, scheduled in a few weeks. The event promised to showcase personal portraits from her estate, curated by Caitlin. Jake's gut told him the crate's contents, those pieces mentioned in Emily's email, would be part of it. He needed someone on the ground in Chicago to confirm. Through a tech firm contact, Jake connected with Michael Reed, a young art critic trying to make a name for himself. Over a video call, Michael's enthusiasm was infectious. "Vivian's work is legendary," he said, eyes bright. "I can get into the exhibition's opening night. What do you need?" Jake explained he was researching a potential museum deal and wanted details on the portraits, especially any link to a Seattle curator. He didn't mention Emily, keeping it professional. Michael agreed to attend and send photos, no questions asked, for a modest fee. While waiting for the exhibition, Jake faced his hardest challenge, Sophie. He couldn't ignore her discomfort any longer. One evening, while Emily was at a museum fundraiser and Lily was at a sleepover, Jake found Sophie curled up on the couch, scrolling through her phone. "Hey, Soph," he said softly, sitting beside her. "We need to talk." She tensed, her fingers pausing. "About what?" she mumbled, eyes fixed on the screen. Jake took a deep breath. "Chicago. I know something's going on with Mom, and I think you do too. You don't have to protect her." Sophie's face crumpled, and for a moment, Jake thought she'd shut down again. But then, in a whisper, she spoke. "I didn't want to lie, Dad. Mom, she was really close to Vivian. Like, really close. She told us not to tell you because it'd hurt you." Jake's heart sank, but he kept his voice steady. "What kind of close, Soph?" She hesitated, tears welling. "They were, I don't know, like best friends, but more. We saw them together a lot in Chicago. Vivian was nice to us, but Mom said you wouldn't understand." Sophie's voice broke, and she buried her face in her hands. "I'm sorry, Dad." Jake pulled her into a hug, his own eyes stinging. Sophie's confession confirmed his worst fears. Not just a friendship, but an emotional bond Emily had hidden for years. He didn't press for more, not wanting to overwhelm her. "You did the right thing telling me," he said, stroking her hair. "This stays between us for now, okay? I'll handle it." Sophie nodded, clinging to him. That moment shifted something in Jake. The betrayal cut deeper than he'd imagined, but seeing Sophie's guilt and love for him sparked a new resolve. He wouldn't let this destroy his daughters. He'd fight for them, for their stability, and for the truth, but he'd do it the right way. Back at home, Jake documented everything. The photo, the emails, Sophie's words, recorded with her permission on his phone, and the exhibition details. He met with Sarah again, who was impressed by his thoroughness. "If those portraits in Chicago are of Emily, and they show what you suspect. It's strong evidence of an emotional affair, she said. We can use it to negotiate a fair settlement. Jake also took steps to secure his finances, quietly separating his consulting income into a new account and updating his asset records. He wasn't hiding money, just ensuring Sophie and Lily would be protected, no matter what came next. As the Chicago exhibition loomed, Jake wrestled with his emotions. Late at night, he'd stare at old family photos, Emily laughing at Lily's birthday, Sophie and him building a sandcastle by Lake Washington. Those memories felt tainted now, but they also reminded him why he was doing this. He wasn't just fighting for himself. He was fighting for a future where his daughters could trust again. The anger was there, simmering, but Jake channeled it into focus. He'd faced the truth head-on, armed with evidence and the law, and he'd come out stronger, for Sophie, for Lily, and for the man he still wanted to be. Jake Kennedy had faced the storm of Emily's betrayal with a scientist's precision and a father's heart. The evidence, Sophie's tearful confession, the emails with Caitlin, and the promise of Vivian Clark's portraits at the Chicago exhibition, had solidified his resolve. As the exhibition date approached, Jake stood ready to confront the truth, not with vengeance, but with a commitment to justice for himself and his daughters, Sophie and Lily. His plan was in motion, guided by his attorney Sarah Wilson and the art critic Michael Reed, but the emotional weight of it all tested his strength. He clung to one thought. He would protect his girls and rebuild their trust, no matter the cost. Michael's report from Chicago arrived the night of the exhibition's opening, a private event for art insiders. His email was brief but devastating, accompanied by photos that made Jake's breath catch. The exhibition featured a series of Vivian's portraits, labeled Moments of Connection, showcasing emotional bonds through soft lighting and candid poses. Several were of Emily, her laughter frozen in time, her eyes locked with Vivian's in a way that spoke of deep affection. The portraits were artistic, not provocative, but their intimacy was undeniable, a public testament to a bond Emily had hidden for years. Michael noted that Emily was there, mingling with guests, and that Caitlin had introduced her as the muse behind Vivian's work. The words hit Jake like a stone. Muse. Not colleague, not friend, muse. Sarah acted swiftly. These portraits, combined with Sophie's statement and the emails, give us a strong case, she told Jake over the phone. It's clear Emily maintained a significant emotional relationship behind your back. We can file for divorce, citing irreconcilable differences, using this as leverage for a fair settlement. Jake agreed, his voice steady, but his heart heavy. He didn't want to drag Sophie or Lily through a messy court battle. So Sarah arranged for a process server to deliver the divorce papers to Emily at the exhibition's closing night, a public yet controlled setting. It's clean, professional, and send a message, Sarah said. Jake nodded, though the idea of Emily's shock in front of strangers brought no satisfaction, only closure. The closing night came, and Jake stayed home, pacing the living room while Sophie and Lily watched a movie upstairs. He'd sent them to bed early, not wanting them to sense his tension, when his phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. Papers served. She's shaken but composed. Call me tomorrow. Jake exhaled, a mix of relief and sorrow washing over him. Emily called an hour later, her voice trembling. Jake, how could you do this? In public, she demanded, but there was no fight in her tone, only desperation. You lied to me for years, Em, he said quietly. I needed the truth, and I needed it to be fair. We're done. He hung up, his hands shaking but his resolve firm. The aftermath unfolded quickly. Emily returned to Seattle, moving into a temporary apartment, while Jake kept the Capitol Hill house for stability's sake. The divorce proceedings were tense, but civil, thanks to Sarah's negotiation skills. Emily didn't contest the evidence, perhaps knowing the portraits and emails painted a clear picture. The settlement gave Jake primary custody of Sophie and Lily, with Emily retaining visitation rights. The house stayed with Jake, while Emily received a portion of their savings and her personal belongings. The portraits, now a sore point in the art world, were returned to her possession, but their public display had already tarnished her reputation among Seattle's curators. Sophie and Lily struggled at first. Lily, confused and hurt, asked Jake why Mom had to leave. He sat her down, choosing his words carefully. "Sometimes people make choices that hurt others, even if they don't mean to," he said, holding her hand. "Mom loves you, but we needed to be honest with each other. I'm here, always." Sophie, older and more aware, was quieter but clung to Jake, her guilt over keeping Emily's secret fading as they rebuilt their bond. One evening, as they grilled burgers in the backyard, Sophie hugged him tightly. "Thanks for not giving up on us, Dad," she whispered. Jake's eyes stung, but he smiled, ruffling her hair. Months later, Jake found a new rhythm. He coached Lily's soccer team, helped Sophie with college applications, and started a small community project teaching kids about science at a local center. It wasn't the grand charity he'd once imagined, but felt right, grounded, meaningful. Emily, now working at a smaller gallery in Chicago, faded into the background, her visits with the girls sporadic but peaceful. The pain of her betrayal lingered, but Jake had transformed it into something stronger, a commitment to truth, to his daughters, and to a life rebuilt on honesty. As he watched Sophie and Lily laugh by Lake Washington one sunny afternoon, he knew he'd won, not by tearing Emily down, but by rising above her lies.